You know, the other day somebody said to me that no matter what I'm going through, I just need to remember that my best day in prison will never match my worst day out here, so I really have nothing to complain about. But I don't think that's true. Because I look back and I thought about the fact that I had some fairly decent days in prison. I even had some days that I look back on fondly. And I've had some absolutely struggling, terrible, difficult days out here. So the days that I struggled out here don't invalidate the good that I had in there. They don't invalidate the fact that in a very difficult situation, I managed to find ways to make the best of it. I managed to connect with people. I managed to do something with my time and with my life that up to that point I hadn't managed to do out here in the world. So it really kind of put me in perspective that I have to appreciate where I'm at. And that there have been a lot of times in my life that I've allowed where I'm at or what I'm dealing with to define me. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to be defined by my struggles. I want to be defined by my response to, the environment and my response to the struggles. And that was a challenge to really kind of come to understand. But as I've dealt with more stress or more struggle out here in the world, as I've had days like curled up in a ball, especially when I first got out, not knowing how I was going to cope or not knowing how I was going to deal or just feeling like the world was too big after those small confines, it really put things in perspective. And it really gave me a different approach on, how to be grateful every day. Because I can still look back on those difficult times. And I can still look back on, the things that I had to deal with and recognize that I don't have to be there to have that kind of gratitude or I don't have to be there to have that kind of focus. I can create that same structure in my life. And so that's what I'm working on there. This morning, the first thing when I got up, I meditated because that's what I did for all those years in prison. I told Courtney, look, we normally have coffee together and kind of do our thing and then go work out. I said, first I need to do this. I need to start getting my structure right. And we went and did a really killer workout. We did all push press and clapping pull-ups, clapping push-ups and pull-ups and then wind sprints. And it was like, okay, this feels good. This is how I started my day for all those years. So it's the thing that I know and the thing that I remember. And as long as I can stay in touch with that, regardless of the environment, I have a structure through which to experience it. And I think that's a really important thing. Because getting out here in the world, it's been so easy to kind of lose that structure that worked for me. It's like, oh, well, I don't need that anymore. Oh, I'm not in there anymore. But daily meditation, daily exercise, daily practice, daily reading, these things that were so good for me in there are just as good out here. They're just so many more distractions. There's so many more ways to say, oh, well, I don't have time or, oh, well, I have something else to do. And it's important for me to remember, no, I can do all those other things, but they're not going to bring me what it is that I'm looking for. They're not going to bring me the same contentment or joy or peace that I had in that very difficult place. So if I could be happy in that very difficult place, how much more happy or how much better could my life be out here in the world? So I try to look at that. Yeah, so we just had a shooting in Charlottesville at UVA. 3 football players were killed. It's really just a heartbreaking story. It was a UVA student who committed the shooting. We still don't know all the details or all the circumstances, but it's a situation and it's a reminder that crime is a reality. And I think that especially in a place like Charlottesville, where you have a great amount of privilege and a great amount of poverty, people have this attitude that as long as it happens in the bad neighborhoods, it's not a big deal. So we had a shooting on the mall a few weeks ago. This was after a period of 2 years of no murders. We had a really bad shooting and 2 innocent bystanders were hit, and all of a sudden it was an issue. And we've had innocent bystanders hit in the past, but they weren't in a public place, they weren't white, there was a whole bunch of things. So in this environment where all these people, send their kids to be safe, or they feel like they're safe because they feel like the campus is somehow separate or away from everything else, it's heartbreaking that these examples are the things that generally motivate change, but unfortunately it often is. And this is Luke the dog hitting the stand. Because often people say, well, I can't relate, or, that's their problem, or it's not my problem. We had this zero-sum game idea, rather than recognizing, hey, we need to do something. Because even if we don't care about the people in that environment, like I would hope we do, but even if we don't, we have to recognize that violence will spill over. This will continue to compound. And right now in Charlottesville, we have 2 groups of kids going back and forth shooting each other. And it's just really ugly. And that's not what the UVA shooting was about, but we don't know what that's about yet. So I'm just kind of speaking in generalities. But that's why I'm so interested in the idea of violence intervention units and community service units that are not there to say, hey, we're going to police you or we're going to come from the outside and tell you what to do, but they're members of that community who are empowered to essentially help solve all issues. So if 2 people have a problem, well, restorative justice is, okay, well, let's restore the harm that was done. If one person steals from another person, they say, okay, we're going to make sure you give that money back. We're going to make sure you undo or you restore the harm you've done. So in the community, they have the ability to do that. And they don't always have the same restorative justice training. They don't have the same idea. They do often have de-escalation. So they're able to go into situations where people have issues or people have beef and say, hey, we need to talk about this or we need to squash this. Because it's not good for business, it's not good for you, it's not good for anybody, it's not good for this community. Like, what about your mom? What about your sister? What about your daughter? Like, how would they feel if you got into this situation? How would they feel if you got locked up? And they do a lot more than that, obviously. I'm oversimplifying, but I've been so impressed to see the way these violence intervention units go into the environments where nobody else wants to go, or where police want to go run in and kind of kick doors down because they don't have another response, and they're able to resolve issues. And I was so disappointed that we weren't able to get them into the juvenile facility yet. We have a meeting this week to try to get them inside because, again, the violence until last night has all been these 14 and 15-year-old kids. And we want to make sure that they have an alternative. They know that there's something there other than the life that they've been living or the forces they've been living around. Because if you grow up in a gang home or a gang neighborhood or a gang environment, you don't necessarily know there's something else. Or even if you know abstractly, like, what are you going to do? You're 14, what, are you going to move out and run to another city? Are you going to, like, call Child Protective Services on yourself? Like, you still love your family. You still love the people around you. Even if you know there's something different, you want something different, there's no practical way to get it. So I'm really hoping that we can help create a sense of community in the juvenile facility and then give kids another alternative when they get out. Because it's really unfortunate to see kids at this young age throwing their lives away either because they don't know better or they don't know an option other than what they're doing because there's no practical way to achieve it. So we're continuing to try to work in the community and make a difference. And that all comes from my experience because I was the lucky one in prison. I was the one with the opportunities and the support. And I see where that got me. I see how it allowed me to take that time and turn it into a time for growth. And I see so many people who had to work 16-hour days in the kitchen or had to struggle to do side hustles or had to do whatever else because they had no opportunity for more than that. Like, they didn't have a resource to be able to get all these books and just sit down and read them all day. Even if they could get a book from the library, they were still in the kitchen 16 hours a day, so they didn't have any time to read. They weren't allowed to bring a book to the kitchen for whatever reason. So my point just being that I was really informed by my experience. And I want to have a clinical side of that as well. You know, when I was speaking at Boston University, I went and talked to somebody from BU, talked to someone from Harvard, trying to make connections so that I can look at how I can further my education, so that I can have both the lived experience as well as the clinical or the academic experience to make sure I can actually apply better solutions or different solutions to problems. Because the one professor I talked to who I really like, he got a PhD in economics from MIT, but he came from a tremendously disadvantaged background. I mean, he grew up half the time homeless. He really struggled, but he was that one kid who got plucked out and sent to charter schools. And it's not that I was plucked out of poverty and sent to a charter school, but I was that same thing. I was that guy in prison. I was that guy in a place of deprivation that had opportunities and had support. Now he's thrived. He's got a PhD from MIT. He's an associate professor. He's a bodybuilder. Like, dude's pretty amazing. I was really impressed by him. And he wants to give back. Like, he asked how he could come contribute to our organization, how he could come teach financial literacy, and how he could contribute. And I was like, that's what we want. We want to find people who, through their experience and through their struggles, recognize that they have something that they can give to other people. And that's what I want to do. And those are the people that I want to be around, because it's really easy to say, all right, I'm out of prison now, I'm going to leave that behind me. Or I'm out of poverty now, I'm going to leave that behind me. But those people who still care and are still connected to where they came from and are still, like, driven to go help and still driven to make a difference, that's what I think is so important. And unfortunately, not everybody has that attitude. And there's this one guy for whatever reason who continually asks me on social media, like, why would you want to go back there? Why would you want to talk to those guys? Or why would you? Well, because I spent half of my life there. Like, I know those people in a way that I know nobody else. Maybe in the future that'll be different. I will have built different relationships and different friendships, but they're people that I care about because we've been through things together. Like, I've been there with their families in the visitation room. I've sat there while they found out that they lost their mothers or fathers or that one of their brothers has died. Like, I've been through that experience with them, so of course I'm not going to forget them. Even so, it's difficult. It's difficult to know how to connect and how to react and what's going on. But I always want to find a way to contribute, and I always want to find a way to be a part of a solution rather than a part of the problem, because that's who I was for most of my life. So I'm grateful for the position with the nonprofit. I'm grateful for the opportunity with the platform and social media, being able to go speak. You know, going to speak at TikTok was amazing because when I go speak at a law school, or I go speak at a university, like, that makes sense consistent with my platform, right? Like, I'm talking to people who are interested in criminal justice reform. When TikTok invites me to come to their corporate offices, that tells me that they care about something more than just the bottom line. And that may be the majority of their focus. They care about something more than the bottom line because they want to highlight stories of success, or they want to highlight stories of social advocacy. They want to highlight stories other than just dance videos. And that really made me feel like I was doing something right. Like, I was getting noticed, not just from the people in the realm that I'm in, not just people that I'm having Zoom meetings with that, you know, run philanthropic organizations, run nonprofit organizations, but that other people feel connected to this story or feel driven to do something. And that's really where I think the change happens, because it's not just it's not just people in one area, right? You don't have to go to school for criminal justice to make a difference in the criminal justice field. You don't have to go to school for, you don't have to become a doctor that specializes in aging to be nice to old people. Like, you can contribute in whatever way is appropriate. And I remember that was one kid at BU, he asked that. He said, look, this isn't my specialty. I'm not pre-law, I'm not criminal justice. Like, how can I contribute? And in my mind, it's like, if you're a journalist, you can tell stories. If you're an engineer, you can design a better system. If you're a business major, you can start a nonprofit that's going to take the profit out of a service that's being offered. There's so many different ways to contribute, and it's about finding your cause, because I always tell people, like, look, it's not just about prison. If you want to work in social work, if you want to work in animal rights, if you want to work in whatever, follow your heart. Like, do that thing that you're passionate about, because that is so important, and so few people in the world do that. So I'm always looking to help empower people to follow their dreams and follow whatever it is that they want to do. And if there's a way that I can connect them with some resource, I want to do that, because that's really it. We have all these years on this earth, and it took me a long time. It took me being in prison to realize this, like, to really feel this at my core. We have all these years on earth, and we can fill it with whatever we want. We can fill it up with parties, and we can, chase pretty women and drive fast cars, and those things are probably fun. Like, I get to drive a Tesla Plaid. I gotta admit, it was really amazing. But it's not gonna make me happy. Like, that's not gonna give me the meaning and the purpose and the contentment that I'm seeking. Where I got that was that simple routine. I was doing the things I needed to do to take care of myself. It was meditating and exercising. And then it was connecting with other people and finding a way to share with other people, as well as how to learn from other people. So it was tutoring somebody, or it was mentoring someone in the mental health pod, or it was saying, hey, this guy knows more than me, and approaching him saying, hey, what do I have to do to learn this from you? Like, I want to study under you. I want you to teach me how to box. Will you teach me how to write? Like, what is it that I can learn in today? And as long as I keep that hunger and that drive to continue learning and continue growing and continue experiencing, and I keep that willingness to share that with other people, what I find is this, like, tremendous movement forward. But the problem that I find, and this, I was talking to a friend about this, after all those years of sitting in a cell and watching TV or just running around a track, I told myself I wasn't going to do that anymore. I'm not going to just sit here and watch TV. I'm not going to sit here and, like, waste my life. But what that means is, at this point, I struggled with finding an off switch. So I was in meetings all day. I was making calls all day. I was exhausted. I had to go deal with, like, a body shop and hitting a deer after I'm already taking my car to the body shop. It was just absolutely crazy. And then I finally got a rental. I finally got things together, and all I wanted to do was take a nap, but I couldn't let myself. Like, I couldn't let myself stop long enough to just take a break, because I was like, no, I've got more to do. I got to respond to these emails. I got to put this program together. I have to figure out something I can do. And I'm trying to give myself permission to slow down and do things a little bit easier and do things a little bit better. Hasn't gotten there, but when I get responses like that, I appreciate that this has been a positive experience for you, watching these videos or hearing these stories. Because if I can make that connection with other people, I know that's just one arm of, what I'm trying to do. Because with a nonprofit, we want to provide direct services. I want to advocate on whatever platform that I can find. I want to tell people stories. We're talking about a project where I would actually be able to go into the prisons and highlight people's stories, where they came from, what it is that they need to basically do better, and basically try to hold them accountable for the things they've done. Because I think there's a lack of that when we talk about criminal justice reform. People only talk about reform of the prison, but not about the system itself. Like, if I committed a crime, I need to be accountable for that crime. I need to make amends for that crime. And we really have this dichotomy. We have, like, the victims' right people who say, oh, we only need to protect the victim and, like, forget the person in prison. We have the prison rights people who say, oh, we only need to reform the system and, like, forget the victim. Like, no, like, we need to restore everything that has been wronged. We need to work towards that. And in some situations, a direct restoration may not be possible. A direct amends may not be possible, but there are indirect amends. And when somebody has actual accountability for what they've done, it allows us to then focus our energy and their time on making amends for what it is, the harm that they've done. Anyways, that's just my random rant for the day, and I appreciate you guys being here. I don't do a lot of YouTube lives, but if you're interested, I can keep doing them, especially if I know what the response is going to be or the best way to interact, because I'm always grateful for the opportunity, and I'm always grateful to share from my experience, and I'm always grateful to learn from the people who make kind of interesting comments or ask really insightful questions and give me a different perspective, because I regardless of my 19 years inside, regardless of my studies, I still have a limited view of how things are and what we can do better. So I always appreciate learning from other people, and hope you have a wonderful day.